me about Eric and also about Sarah, so there was some good connections. Troy, you're giving our community there, and said that he had heard that Eric was this dynamic speaker and that we should have him come. And so I contacted Eric, and sure enough, he was very grateful in accepting that invitation. And I'm not sure, I think I was looking for a logo or something for your company, and I Googled his name, and up came some pictures for Eric, and one of them was him standing on a vehicle, and with the heading, "We can make a house out of that." And I thought, wow, what a great angle to, if we did have something in the evening, we could float that out to our community, and that picture would really capture people, and hopefully we'd get a turnout. So I know that when we made the approach to the schools, that they were really keen on something like that in terms of something that looks really different and with that heading. So without further ado, our last speaker tonight is Eric Penner-DeWall, and come on up, Eric, and welcome.
Dynamic. I don't know. So I'm Eric Penner-DeWall. Hello. I think what I'm going to do is tell you a big chunk about me, because I'm vain, and then I will. I'll show you the video clip of the TV show that they're trying to put together, and I don't know, trying to make me get into like a boxing ring with Mike Holmes or something. I'm not really sure what their motive is for this. I think it's money, but I'm not sure. And then tomorrow I'll go really into depth with the whole rehouse, and I don't know if you guys are here tomorrow, but tomorrow I'll really go into the nuts and bolts and how they were all different sizes and how we couldn't get any of them to fit. So as for history myself, I grew up in Chilliwack I was born in Surrey and then ended up in Chilliwack, BC, and I knew I loved building when I remember my parents had one of those couches that had those really big square cushions, and you could take them and you could like build a fort out of them like really, really easily, right? You know these ones. Oh yeah, you know them. And I remember building a fort, in the couch, and I remember crawling into this fort, and I remember being inside of it and distinctly realizing that I was somewhere very different than sitting on the couch. And I had, in a very basic way, created a new space. And I could feel it. I was in this space, and it was extraordinary for me to have created that at, I don't know how old I was. And then, I probably bumped it and the whole fell over, so hopefully my skills improved over the years. After doing that, I think I kind of got hooked. And my parents used to buy me these like Costco packs of Scotch tape for my birthday. Like that would be like the one thing I wanted, right? And I'd go through Scotch tape at like alarming rates, and I would my mom would go into the cupboards, and I would have like pillaged and purloined all of the cereal boxes because I loved that cardboard. It was such a perfect cardboard. It was easy to cut, and it was so good to build with. And I'd build crazy amounts of stuff. And I remember one time building a replica of Darth Vader in my bedroom, and my mom came in, and Darth Vader was like standing in the corner like this, and she like totally lost it, like totally freaked out. And I had to like grab her by the shoulders. My mom, calm down! It's cereal boxes and tape. Calm down, it's not a real person. And I had to like go and like take the sheet off of it and actually show her that it wasn't real. So I kind of was always into building things and having fun. I ended up moving to Alberta after I graduated high school a year or two later, and I just kind of got a job doing something that I thought that I hadn't done that would be fun. And it happened to be with a construction company, and I started doing construction there, and then that led into an apprenticeship, and then so I did an apprenticeship in carpentry. And because my boss, I was actually in a place called Coaldale, right near Lethbridge, he actually had like no morals or values, and he forced us to work like Egyptian slaves. And so I managed to actually complete a 4-year apprenticeship in 3 years because I had enough hours by the end of 3 years to complete it. And so I have lots of bruises and scars, which I can't show you because I'll expose myself, which he caused me. Yeah, I got that done, and then right after that went on my own because I always had a really hard time working for other people. I felt it really bugged me going somewhere and having to listen to somebody. I just hate that. I hate listening to other people. So I decided that no, I wasn't going to do that. I was going to go out on my own, and so. Initially it was me and this little Nissan pickup truck, driving around with some tools. Actually, my wife at the time was really upset with me because I got this job and I was moonlighting. So I'd go to work during the day and then I'd go work at night. But the contractor at night, he agreed to pay me in tools. So we would rack up the money and then we'd walk into like the tool shop and he'd be like, okay, what do you want? And I'm like compressor, nail gun, drill. And I accumulated my tools this way. I never got paid a red cent. And then he could write it off on his taxes. And then I got paid in tools and didn't have to pay tax. He's now a police officer, but it worked out really well for us. It worked out really good. So I kind of gained those tools and I piled them into my little Nissan pickup and I went renovating on my own and kind of did a little bit of work. And I've always kind of done this thing where, I'm sure there's a name for it, but it's like seeing a big pile of shit and just like jumping into it. Because it's just like, and I don't think it's really courage. I think it's more just naivety, like not really knowing what I'm getting myself into. And so this continued on, and I remember signing my first my first contract of consequence, I guess. And I remember signing it. It was for $356,000, and I was going to build these people this house, and we signed it. And then they said, "By the way, how old are you?" And I said, it doesn't even matter, really. And they're like, no, really, how old are you? And I was 24 at the time, and they were a little bit shocked at that. But I think I made do. I think they were okay with it. And that was kind of the house that kind of pushed me to start thinking differently about what we were actually building. And I don't want to trash talk getting your certification, but really, when I got my ticket, I think I got it here. This is what they give you after 4 years. They make sure it's just a little bit too big, so it doesn't actually fit in a normal pocket in your wallet, and that you can hardly read it. It's really not that exciting. And then they give you, if you pass the national exam, they give you this red stamp. And so this is like God, right? Like you're supposed to be able to walk onto a commercial job site and be like, I'm a certified journeyman carpenter. I'm worth $35 an hour. You should pay me. I didn't know what vapor barrier was for when I got this. And no word of a lie, I didn't actually know what vapor barrier was for. So it's really, it's not that it's a big load of horse shit, but it's probably about half of a load of horse shit, the ticket. And it's really good to have if you want to impress people or women. I can pull it out and I'll be like, yeah, this is my ticket, but I've actually got the red seal too. So, what do you think of that? And they're like, so no, it doesn't really actually work. So really my point is though that after I actually got my ticket, it's at that point that I really feel like my education really started. Because I just got interested in alternative methods of building, and I ended up taking a straw bale workshop from Dave and Dan and Craig on how to build straw bale. And again, like my entire world of construction crumbled around me because I realized that there was so much I actually didn't know, right? And just learning about that method and all the expertise you have to do that. I mean, I don't know. I was just telling Dave actually earlier today. I'm not sure if someone offered me to build a straw bale house today, I would take it on very carefully because it's a different beast completely, right? And you really have to know what you're talking about. So I kind of always say that I'm actually getting dumber with age because as I'm getting older, what there is to know is more, and what I do know is actually less in comparison to what there is to know. And the construction industry is like that. Like it doesn't end. It just keeps going and going and going. And I finally just threw the towel in and I was like, forget it. I'm gonna build a house out of garbage because that sounds like fun. So as my journey in this industry moves on, I find myself continually baffled and in awe of like you guys doing this. Like, I'm like totally humbled by the people that I find myself in company with because it's amazing. So so I did this. They got this contract for $356,000. Actually, I made them write me a check for $27 right off the hop because I told them it was travel expenses. It was amazing. It's like the best day of your life when you have like a $27,000 check in your hand. I ended up being over budget on travel by about 10 grand on that job. But I started building this house, and they were pretty keen on being like really kind of conscious about the planet and stuff like that. And I was definitely leaning that way. Like I made sure there was no aluminum in my deodorant and things like that. And I started building with a lot of like logs. So they wanted me to take these logs and work with these logs, and it ended up getting like a little bit elaborate. And I remember the finale was I don't know, maybe I was feeling confident or something. And there was 2 points where I knew I'd got myself in over my head. Well, no, there's a lot more points than that, but 2 very particular points. I remember standing and we were looking at down where the landing, the stairwell opened and went into the basement, and we're like looking over, and we knew we had to put a post in there of some sort. And we're trying to figure out what this material should be and what would look best. And I said, this is your cabin. It should be a tree. And they looked at me like, can you do that? I'm like, yeah, yeah. And so they agreed, and then they left, and then I'm like, oh, shit, right? And I remember Willie, the building inspector, coming in, and I went into the forest, literally, and I like kind of found this deadfall tree, and I dragged it into where the driveway kind of was to this house, and I kind of cut the branches off of it so there was not too many leaves hanging off of it. And Willie, the building inspector, came out, and he kind of walked through the house, and I have this method of dealing with building inspectors where I really just kind of like blow hot smoke up their ass, and I make them think they're really, really smart, and then they love me, and then we're usually okay. And that day it paid off, because as he's walking out, he stops beside the tree, and he goes, "Oh, Eric." And I said, "Yeah, what is it?" And he says, "We got to talk about what that post in the basement." He's like, "What are you using for that? Like, are you going to put a telepost in there? What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, you're kind of standing beside it." And he goes, "Where?" And I said, "Willie, it's the tree." And he looks at me and he goes, "Oh, no." And I said, "Yeah, it's kind of the plan." And he goes, "Oh, Jesus, it's a cottage." And he just walked away. And so he let me get away with it, which was pretty awesome. And managed to actually get this tree, and then it came out of the basement, and then it broke out before the ceiling, and the branches all went up into the ceiling. It was really cool. And then I remember a couple weeks later, I don't know, again, naivety and not really knowing what I was getting into, I said it'd be really cool, without thinking at all, I said it'd be really cool to have a staircase that came off your deck with like logs that were bent, you know? So it was like this like beautiful like sweeping staircase that went up onto the deck. And again, they were like, yeah, it sounds great. These people had money, like it was ridiculous. And they're like, "Well, how much?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know, I priced it. I'm like, $5,000. I could build a staircase for $5,000. And they're like, "Yeah, okay, go for it." So then again, it was like okay, the trees that I know that have really beautiful bends that can work are cedar, and I'm in Russell, Manitoba. And I'm like, okay. So I ended up having to take these logs, and I took them to a mill, and I milled them into planks, and I planed them down, and I built this jig, and I bent them, and I laminated them back together, and it worked good. But it wasn't without its trials and tribulations, that's for sure. So finally finished that house. She ruined it on the inside. She designed it. It was kind of like this beautiful log cabin in the woods, and then she decorated it as though it was like a Mexican hacienda inside. It was really weird. I went back a year later, and I thought, "Holy Christ, you wrecked my house." Yeah, it was like, out of my house. You kind of you take possession of these things, right? It's kind of hard. You work so hard on something, and you invest yourself, and you kind of want to be like, "What? You think just because you have money, you can have this? Like, just because you paid me money, you think this is yours?" Which is actually true, believe it or not. So finished that one, and then ended up moving to Regina to get away from my then in-laws, and kind of moved to Regina, and was really actually shocked with the city. I was completely taken aback to its beauty, and it's just like I didn't know. I'd never lived in Saskatchewan before, and discovering things like Wascana and stuff was just shocking. It was just beautiful. And started to wonder what would happen if I made cards and put general contractor on them. Because I didn't know what it really meant to be a general contractor. I wasn't sure if it was like a designation or something. But I figured someone would tell me if I printed business cards with that on there. And eventually we'd see what happens. So I did that, and that was a little over 3 years ago, and now I found myself with a staff of 10, and we're doing all sorts of crazy projects, and I'm not really sure what's going on. But that's okay. It's kind of part of the fun too, I think. And then in the process of that, I came up with another idea for a building product that was this stud that limited thermal bridging. It's a really long story. Come talk to me afterwards. It cost me nothing but money. And so then I had to do patent, and patents are actually really weird things. They don't actually mean anything, and they cost like enormous sums of money. It's amazing. My patent attorney is $500 an hour. Figure that out. $500 an hour. I should have been a patent attorney, is what I learned through that. So I'm kind of like dabbling in that and kind of like inventing building materials, but walnut is the thing that's supposed to actually be feeding me, although that doesn't seem true some days. And so kind of having this construction company and moving forward with that, we were finding that the amount of construction waste was disgusting. And for a while there, I used to. You have anybody who lives in Harbor Landing here before I start making comments? No. Okay.
You're pretty safe.
Am I safe? Okay. No offense to Harbor Landing. I mean, people do what they're going to do. But I remember driving through Harbor Landing, and I remember standing at the end of the street and looking down the street, and there was a red Laura's, this, like we call them Laura ass bins, but the Laura ass bins were like one in front of every single house and just like heaping full. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is disgusting. This is really disgusting. Actually, a term that I just kind of came across here recently through my massage therapist. Weird. She said, you can't change the world. You can only change your world. And I thought, okay, well, back then I guess that's what I was thinking is how can I change my world? Because, I can't force these contractors to stop doing this. But what I can do is embarrass the shit out of them so that they look at this and they go, oh, maybe I should actually try to do something different. And I wasn't trying to go out to embarrass them. I just wanted to show, hey guys, maybe we can actually do something differently because, hey, we're a general contractor too. It says so on my business card. And, we throw away a lot of stuff too sometimes. So we wanted to do something different. So that's kind of where this idea for this thing we called the Rehouse came from. And it was kind of a play on words for Habitat, through the Habitat Restore. So we partnered up with Habitat Restore. I had dreadlocks at the time. I don't know how I did it, but I somehow managed to convince them that I was legit. And they agreed to provide us with the infrastructure of getting volunteers and the space to build this house out of recycled material. And so the goal was 80% recycled material. We went to John Robinson at Robinson Residential Design in Regina and said, can you design a cabin that would work for this? And we were going for something very basic, very small, because it was going to be built as an RTM, because it was being built on site at the Habitat Restore. And very simple. And somewhat changeable, because sometimes you can't actually choose what you're going to use for construction, right? So we went up, we took this thing on. I had no concept. Another one of those things where the big pile of crap that you just kind of like jump into. This was another one of those. Do you want a curved staircase? You want a house built out of garbage? I can do that. So yeah, we just kind of like dove in there, and we had to start collecting a lot of materials. So we were going to sign companies, and we were going to, Fries Tallman was great. They had like lifts of yard call plywood that they couldn't get rid of that had been like chipped or broken corners or whatever. And Kevin Stricker at Fries was just like, well, why don't you just take it all? And we're talking like 2 lifts of like 5/8 plywood. So that was huge. So we kind of went about starting this project, and it happened in August, this past August. And I guess maybe what I'll do is just show you the video, and then I'll give you a chance to ask questions, if that's cool. Now, I do generally work with hammers, but I think there's a big play button here, and I might be capable. My company does specifically environmentally friendly, non-toxic, super energy efficient construction, and we found that the kind of construction waste that was ending up in the landfill was ridiculous. I said to myself, we can make a house out of that.
This is the most innovative cottage.
If you just open your eyes to the world around you, there is building materials everywhere. We were thinking about the doors as wainscoting thing, chalkboards above. But we're also building the furniture, which is anything from bicycle rims to tailgate of a truck.
My goal for the whole project was 80% recycled material, which I think we're easily going to hit.
It's like a pile of houses right there. Perfect. This trunk was meant to be an awning for a window.
It's a great company, awesome hippie company.
Lee is the yoga master. Andrea's really strong. Don't mess with Andrea. Lacey's a hard worker, but still very friendly. Angus doesn't like people screwing around. Roy's a hippie for sure.
Everybody's so positive and relaxed. Don't shoot me, I'll throw you off this roof.
It's my first day working with Eric. It's definitely the most interesting job I've had.
Did you need some cheese?
The build? It's awesome.
Look at this.
Well, made out of garbage. It's not garbage. It's recycled materials.
Okay, center down.
Safety is number one here. I don't think I quite comprehended how mammoth a task it was going to be. Show me your windows. They look a lot like doors. Say it with me. Here, not back here. There's a lot of pressure here. I'm freaking out. Well, that one's wrong, and that one's wrong. Okay, you're right. I fucked up. It can't get done and look like shit. It's got to get done and look good.
I'm not sure if it's gonna be done in time, but I'm an optimistic person.
We can use all the help we can get. If your tools don't get locked, they don't work. I was actually really shocked that so many people came out.
I was just so interested and really wanted to be a part of it. I thought, let's give it a go.
Here you go.
Everybody's having a good time. Eric is crazy.
Jesus! I think... They've taken a huge chance with us because who knows what this thing's going to look like. Who knows?
Not worried about it? No.
We're not sure what the cost of the cabin's going to be in the end. Hope for the best.
Yeah.
I love this. This is great. Even commercial people should be looking into this aspect of building nowadays.
Here we're using things that I would never even thought of.
They just throw it in the dump because once the sign's stale, the sign's stale. You can't use the sign anymore. And we're going to cut it to 6-inch strips and make them 0-inch out of it. What style would you call it? Oscar the Grouch meets Martha Stewart. Is it art? It's absolutely art. It's art you can live in. Get up there, guy.
Oh my goodness. Look at the wall.
That looks great.
Oh my goodness.
You save the environment, save money too at the same time. That's a win-win.
We can make a house like that. So actually the people who you see who were the buyers actually didn't end up buying it because they found out how much it was going to cost to move and they backed out. So talking about like little hitches, I suddenly found myself with like a little bit of a bill and I owned a house. But when in doubt, go drink at Bushwhacker and you will run into somebody at Bushwhacker that wants to buy it, which is what happened. So yeah, I was a little bit liquored up and we were going to start at 35, I think, when I was going to ask, it was kind of like our price. And I had had a few of the Firkin on that Friday and I said, yeah, if we could get 30 for it, we'd take it. And he said, okay. And I went, really? Damn it. So, but that's okay. So that's actually hasn't left the Habitat Restore yet. It leaves on in the spring. So, any questions about any of the mentalness that I'm talking about? Yeah.
What did you use on the exterior?
Pallets. Actually, we broke down like hundreds and hundreds of pallets. It was an enormous task. I don't know if you ever tried to take a pallet apart before. It's phenomenal. It's like the most difficult thing ever. So we learned some tricks actually. Yeah, actually what we did is you stack them and then you take a skill saw and you cut the ends of the nail. Like you just write off the nails because you're not going to get the nails out. It's not going to happen. Most of them are nailed with Hardox nails, which are the little twisty ones. They're like half screw, half nail. They're like the worst devils in the world. So we just cut them right off and we just wrote them off and we ended up getting, enough lumber to side the entire house out of it for free. So that was pretty cool.
Where's the house now?
It's at the Habitat for Humanity Restore in Regina, in the backyard.
Where's it going?
It's going near Indian Head. Yeah, the couple that bought it have some land out there and they're moving it out to Indian Head. Yeah.
What was their cost to move it?
The original folks were going to take it to White Bear, and the moving costs were about $13,000, which was almost half the cost of the home. So that's when they and then they still had to do septic and they still had to do sewer, and they wanted to do solar. So they were looking at a pretty hefty bill by the time they were done. Like they were looking at a $60,000-$70,000 bill.
and they just backed out, which really threw everything into a tailspin, really. I mean, what you're not seeing in the video is the night that Roy and I, one of my head carpenters and I stayed up right through the night to try and finish it for the open house. And then people show up for the open house, and we were like burnt out, like we were looking fried. It was bad news. So there was a lot of headache in there.
So does that have to go by through a building inspector?
The way it works is we did build it to satisfy Canadian Building Code. The things that weren't recycled in it were stuff like baseboard heaters, electrical, like wiring, hot water heater, plumbing. And this company donated the sink, which really kind of pissed me off because I really appreciated the free sink, but you know, I just about gave the Habitat for Humanity a brand new sink and took a used one because that was kind of the point. I mean, I really appreciate the free materials, but it was just kind of like, it's not the point of this, you know? We want to build stuff out of garbage. It's not garbage, it's recycled materials. So that's what the TV show people keep telling me. So.
What do you use for floor?
Those are all, funny thing actually, so every time a hardwood floor gets installed, you always have a box left over, right? You're always going to have one box. And these hardwood flooring installers, they accumulate these things, and we actually got in contact with one installer, and we said, what are you doing with all your leftover hardwood flooring? And he says, well, I ran it through the thickness planer to take the finish off of it, and I burn it in my hardwood stove. He says, it burns like you wouldn't believe. He said, you should see some of this cherry and stuff, it burns forever. And so after I picked myself up off the floor and stopped crying, we asked if he would be willing to donate these boxes, and I said, we said, so have you ever tried putting this stuff together with this box? And he's like, well, no, they're completely different manufacturers. They looked at me like I had two heads, right? And I'm like, well, have you ever tried? He's like, well, no, why would you? So you have to be very careful. I actually used a laminate flooring underlay, like an engineered floating floor underlay underneath it, which was made out of recycled material, by the way, but bought new. And it had a little bit of a cushion, so it kind of ate up the difference in thickness in the hardwood flooring. And it fit together. As long as you were careful, you had to plan out your next row, it worked beautifully. So the whole floor is just hardwood flooring, just leftover hardwood flooring. Thanks. Yeah, it was free. It was free. It was a beautiful thing. Anybody else? No? Cool. Thanks.
No? Okay. Thanks.
So when is this gonna come out?
Oh, the TV show. Right now, the preview you actually saw is the preview they're using to try to sell to networks. So they're going after like the big guys, of course, like HGTV and Discovery and all that. And Zoot's big goal is to get a TV series out of it so that we can continue to build these and stress me out and make me have a heart attack. If it works, then great. If it doesn't, it'll likely air on like SCN or something like that.
Submit it to SaskTel for their.
SaskTel will take it. I mean, if nobody else will take it, SaskTel will take it.
You need to connect up with Rick Mercer on this one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it'd be good.
Okay, well, it's been a long day, and I'd like to thank, a round of applause for all our speakers tonight. Thanks very much for coming out. And it's great, and again, thanks to SciAS for videoing that, and it's good to have that as some archive for our conference and to share that, and we'll have to get some signatures from you if you're interested in having that distributed. So again, thanks very much. There are some muffins. If you need a couple of muffins for the road, please take them. And 9 o'clock, coffee's on for 8:30 tomorrow morning with muffins, fresh ones. And again, thanks to everyone for coming out today. So have a good night.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to day 2. We're ready to get this going here. One small change to the program for this morning though. Trevor is going to bypass his little speech and everything since he did the same one yesterday morning. He is still here, so if you had come to see him again, you can ask him questions. He is more than willing and able to answer any questions. But we are going to hand it over to Eric Penner-DeWall. I had the pleasure of listening to him talk last night, and he is a very passionate and, well, he'll tell you he isn't, but a very educated man, very learned, and listen to every word he has to say. There, I set you up there.
Thanks. I've been told I have to use the microphone this morning. So, Sarah and I yesterday were speaking at a high school, and we, on the way out, we were like, we should buy chocolate bars, because kids like chocolate bars, and we'll use them to give out, and then we forgot to give them out, so guess what that means for you. So, I think what we'll do is have a little, like, green building quiz here. So, how about, who can tell me what thermal bridging is? Okay, right here.
It's what you wouldn't get if you bought really good smart stuff.
Oh, how many chocolate bars do you want?
All of them.
Okay, I'm done. So what really is it?
Thermal bridging is when you have a break in installation, usually by a structural support member, so that the energy or the heat from the home can bridge through your installation to the outside.
There you go. Pick one.
Mars bar.
Mars bar. Stole my breakfast. Okay, let me think here. Another green building question. What is the adhesive? Sarah, you can't answer any of these questions, by the way. What is the adhesive in most engineered wood products, plywood, that is a volatile organic compound, causes cancer, and nobody really seems to care? No, Trevor. Oh, yeah. Done. It is cereal formaldehyde. Sweet Marie, Wonder Bar, caramel.
Wonder Bar.
Wonder Bar, good choice. Catch? Oh, maybe I can't throw. What is the standard of wall insulation in a typical house by building code, and what would we prefer to see? Yeah?
20.
And what would be better?
Like,
Anything, nice. What was that?
like R40.
That'd be cool. I'd push for R60. But that's cool. Caramel or Sweet Marie?
Caramel.
Done. I know how to get it in, by the way. Okay, and last one. And Dave, you can't answer this, I don't think. What are the two different structural styles of building a straw bale? Okay, Dave, you can answer this one.
Post and beam.
Okay, that's one.
Load bearing.
Load bearing, yeah. You guys gotta share a Sweet Marie. Thank you for letting us get rid of those chocolate bars, because if I ate them, last night we went to Nick's Sports Bar or something like this, and I ate, I think, like 4 pounds of grease. Like it was like we ordered this platter, and it was literally just like deep fried balls of grease, and I couldn't do it again. So anyway, like how it was lovely the introduction. I am Eric Penner de Wall. I own a construction company in Regina called Walnut Construction. The ownership style is that I technically own it, but it actually owns my life completely. It turns out that being a contractor is pretty insane, particularly when you've never really done it before and you don't really know what you're doing. So we kind of specialize, our kind of tagline is earth conscious building. So we build, everything we do is highly efficient, non-toxic as much as we possibly can, and then in general we try to be as good of an environmental steward as possible. So, and it's really vague, and that's on purpose, because what I realized really early on was that green building isn't just a set of rules, and it doesn't really apply. You can't just be like, well, we do this, and this is our thing, and that's why we're green. It doesn't work. You have to look at every single project individually, and you actually have to come up with a battle plan for every one to try and figure it out. So what might be the greenest thing on one project might not be the greenest thing on the other project, and that's a really hard line to follow. So everybody always asks me, well, what's earth conscious building? And the simple answer is just, it's an attitude. So that's kind of what Walnut Construction does. We're in Regina. We've got more staff than I can handle now, and it's a little intense. Oh, you know what? I so need the presenter's view in this. Can I do that? Okay, this isn't. Really?
Change it so it's 2 views, because right now it's showing you the exact same view. Go to property.
Really? I'm glad Sarah knows what she's talking about. She does these presentations all the time. Because my presenter's view has all my notes in it.
Okay, I don't actually know what I'm doing here. If anyone would like to jump up.
Hang on, there's got to be your view. Oh, wait. Notes page. Slide master. That sounds really exciting.
Right now it's set, so it's going to show exactly the same on both.
But the presenter's view should not. Well, you know what? That's okay. I can do it without.
I don't know XP very well, sorry.
This is XP? Oh my goodness. It's like ancient.
Here's the man that can help you.
AV man, help. I need the presenter's view. Do you know how to do that? Oh, I can't. Okay, just put it back to normal then.
Okay.
Oh, just give her. No. A remote? So if I push this, the slide will go, so I can just pretend I'm all casual like this and be like, okay, so, did you see that? Yeah. That's really cool. I come off super smart that way. Okay, so yeah, this is a brain. This is actually a real human brain. And it kind of creeped me out at first, but I thought it was a really neat picture. The thing about the brain is that it will fire 20 million billion neurons a second. So 20 million billion neurons. So this is like more information than typically I could probably handle, right? So as you're walking around in life, you're looking at things, and 20 million billion neurons in a second are firing in your brain. So there's a ton of information coming into your brain. And as children, as kids, as infants, we're like getting all this information. You know that look when like babies are like laying in their bed and their eyes are like really huge and they're like, whoa. And you don't actually get that look again until you're in college. What that is these kids are taking in all this information and they're like, I'm like, whoa, I'm like totally overloaded here, right? So what happens is we start to categorize things. We start to look at things and we start to go, okay, I need to kind of put this in a box because I every time I look at a pencil, I don't want to figure out that, okay, it's kind of like orangey yellow and it's got this weird little like red thing on the top and it's got this gold band and it's sharp at the end. Oh, it hurts me if I poke it. No, you want to look at it, you want to go, that's a pencil, right? So what we do really, oh wait, hang on. Oh, did you see that? That's cool. So you get 20 million billion neurons firing. So we're going to start trying to categorize these things to make it easier on us, right? That's a chair, that's a car, that's a house, it's a building, whatever. And that helps us kind of get to the point where we can process information way, way faster. The problem with that, though, is that it makes us walk into Home Depot and we're like, okay, we want flooring. And we walk directly to the flooring department, right? Because there's a sign up there and it says flooring. So I'm just going to go there because it says flooring. But I'm not going to walk to maybe the kitchen department, or I'm not going to walk anywhere else. I'm just going to go to the flooring department. And then after I've looked at all the flooring, I'm going to be like, oh, damn it, there's no flooring here that I like. I guess they have no flooring. I'll go to the next store, and you will look in the flooring department there. So what happens is, if you take flooring, and you decide not to just use it as your floor, and you stick it on the walls, you can get some really weird effects. So this is a store in the States. And they use the same flooring on the walls and on the ceiling. Now, some people might not like the look, but I say, hey, why not? Someone finally just said, well, flooring, what are the characteristics of it? It's hard, it's easy to install, it's easy to clean, and it's really durable. So it sounds like it could be a good wall finish or ceiling finish. And so you stick it on the wall ceiling, and you get cool stuff happening. So this is how my brain kind of works. I look around and I see things, and I'm kind of going, that could be this, or that could be that. And at the same time, I have this construction company, and as there's other contractors here, there's some construction waste going into the dump. And Walnut, we try to recycle and reuse as much stuff as we possibly can. We donate tons to the restore, but it's ridiculous. I mean, there's a lot of construction waste that goes, and I think we were just talking yesterday, the number that's kind of thrown around that if contractors actually reduce their waste as much as they possibly could, we could reduce 80% of what goes in the dump. So, like, it's enormous. It's sick. So this is a picture of a new development in Regina, and both dumpsters are full. Laura's is making a lot of money, and often they're full with stuff that I kind of look at and I'm going, well, maybe I could actually use that. So we kind of figured, hey, it'd be really cool to do a demonstration project to kind of just make an example of what can be done with recycled materials, because I can't go to, like, you know, Dundee Homes or Northridge and say, hey guys, you should stop doing this because that's bad. They're not going to get it. But if I build a house out of their garbage and then I put it on TV and I get it all over the radio, then, well, I'm not going to, like, name them, of course, but, you know, it's not their fault. It's our garbage too, trust me. It's kind of like, well, maybe we could do something different. Oh yeah. So we started collecting garbage. We started going dumpster diving. We started going to job sites and looking at what kind of waste there was. This is beautiful. I love this one. This is good. It's like a full sheet of OSB there. It's gorgeous. Yeah, piles of garbage everywhere. And we started looking at other places too. We started looking for pallets. And we looked for old signage. And so after we had all that garbage, we kind of like started dumping it off at the Restore. And the Restore, Habitat for Humanity was really amazing in this project because we went in and we said, okay, look, we don't really know what we're doing, but we think we can handle the house part of it. But when you're doing a build like this, we need tons of manpower. And the volunteers and just organizing that is a huge, I don't know, it's very complicated. And I'm a carpenter and I can really swing a hammer, and sometimes that works in motivating volunteers, but not always. So we said, hey, would you guys come on board and would you guys basically facilitate bringing the volunteers in and actually help us, organize it? And they jumped right on board. They were like, yeah, we're in. So they organized the volunteers. We were planning it in August for 3 days. Over 3 days, we're going to build this thing, which turned out to be a little bit of an underestimation. And we started storing stuff at the Restore. So once we had that kind of done, we started gathering all these materials, and we went to John Robinson at Robinson Residential Design, and we started having him do up a plan. And so we came up with a 512 square foot floor plan. It has an extra 300 square feet of loft space for extra space because it's built as an RTM at the Restore, so it's going to be moved out of the Restore. And we went for it. So preparation began. We built the floor frame first, so everybody builds as a 3-day build, but we kind of cheated because, build a house in 3 days, it's insane. It's retarded, there's no way. Actually, there is a video on YouTube of a bungalow being built in 2 hours and 47 minutes, I think, including concrete and drywall, mud, and tape. It's remarkable. There's like about 480 safety violations in the video, but it's interesting to watch. So in the Restore, we basically set up the scaffolding on the high side of the wall where the high side of the wall was going to be. We brought in as much materials as we could. We tried to prep everything as best as we could. It was kind of hard to do that, especially with the pallets because they're so labor intensive. I phoned a mobile sign company. There's mobile signs that you can rent, and they kind of like sit on the yard. And I said, hey, do you have any like old signage or plywood or anything? And he kind of chuckled and he said, yeah. What are you thinking? And I'm like, well, can we have it? And he said, yeah, you can come and take it out of the signs if you want. So we showed up, and he loved this, right? Because we're thanking him. We're like, oh, thank you for the plywood. And he's like, yeah, you got to take it out of all these, 80 signs. So I had my staff there for a day just pulling all of the plywood out. But he was getting a service done, because what happens is they use this plywood and they painted it. And so they paint it like a yellowy black kind of color. Use it as a sign for a while, but then once the plywood starts to flake, all the paint starts to flake off, you can't really, they gotta either scrape it and repaint it. It's not really worth it, but there's nothing wrong with the plywood. So what they do is they take the plywood off and throw it in the garbage, okay? Whereas we were like, okay, we'll just take it. And we got tons of plywood from this. We actually sheeted probably about 90% of the entire outside of the house in this plywood. And it was 1/2 inch good plywood. So we did that. We also called another sign company who dealt in plastic signs. And I asked them, hey, do you guys have any old signage that's stale that isn't working anymore? And they said, oh yeah, we've got some. Do you want to come and look? And I walked in and they said, well, you can have this one. And there was a 10-foot by 14-foot piece of Lexan. And it had a tire company's name on it. And I was like, these are throwing this out. They're like, oh yeah, well, we can't do anything with it. So this is the psychology thing, right? These people are thinking in signage. That's all they know. They go to work, they work at a sign company, and they're looking around and they see signs, and they're like, these are useless for signs. But what they don't realize is that somebody else could probably use that. I mean, I don't know what that sheet of Lexan would cost new, but I'd hate to guess. It would probably be ridiculous. So we took all this signage that they had, and we took that to the Restore as well. And people started asking questions. They were like, what is going on? So the day of the build, all of a sudden all these volunteers showed up, which was amazing. Habitat has this way of conning people into coming and doing really horrible work. It's hard work and you sweat, and for some reason people love it. I don't know, I don't get it. It's really weird. At the same time that this happened, we also had a local production company, Zoot Pictures, and they've done some nature things for CBC, and they're good, they're very well known. And they kind of decided that they wanted to film it. So they wanted to make pitch it as a TV show. And so I didn't really have any issue with that. So I said, yeah, come on out. And so here's Leif, the producer, / cameraman, / director. And he starts filming, which is a little bit of an interesting dynamic. because they wire you up, right? So you get this cordless mic on your pants, and then they put a microphone on you, and they tell you, you know, just forget that it's there, which you do, including when you go to the washroom. And so you'll, and like you can't hear them, but they can hear you, so you'll come out of the outhouse, and Leif will be standing there, and he'll say, thanks. There's a mute button on that. If you could just hit that the next time you do what you just did, that would be great. So a little bit awkwardness there. However, I did find it somewhat useful because the build's insane. There's people running everywhere. There's materials all over the place. And I was sitting in the skid steer at one point, and I was trying to get my operations manager's attention. Lee, I'm trying to get Lee's attention. I'm like, Lee, and I'm like yelling out the window, and I can't get him. And Leif is standing filming me in the skid steer. And then finally I just went, Leif, get Lee's attention. And Leif looks up from the camera and he's like, get his attention, I need him. So he like puts the camera aside and goes and gets me. So it's good. It was a fun thing to be a part of, but very, very weird. Very weird. I don't know. TV's an odd thing. So first day, volunteers show up, and we start working. Now I have to tell you, I never built a house in 3 days before, nor have I ever tried to do it out of recycled material. And it turns out that it's like a little bit of work. And the materials alone can be very hard to work with because like the signage had to all be scraped down. So like all the tracks that the old little letters would sit in had to all be peeled off and taken apart. And so it was pretty labor intensive. However, I'll talk about numbers at the end. It was still affordable. We actually still, if we were to still actually sell the house for the cost that, if we had actually paid the volunteers, it still would have cost about half what the house would have cost on a new material. So here, this is a pallet full of cabinet doors. So in Regina, there's a bunch of cabinet companies, and they have these oops doors. So they make these doors, and they make them out of anything. It could be cherry, it could be walnut, it could be pine, whatever. And they make these cabinet doors, and then they don't fit. So they built them wrong for somebody. So they stack them up, right? But you're talking about custom cabinet doors. They're pretty hard to reuse. So what do? They want to offload them. So they give them to the restore, and they feel good about themselves, which is great. That's what we do. But the restore ended up with like 6 pallets of these. And the ones they sell the most of are the white ones because there's a lot of white kitchens. However, if you have a custom stained cherry kitchen and you're looking for a custom stained cherry door, the likelihood that you're going to find it is pretty rare. So we looked at, well, I remember in there and I looked at all these cabinet doors and I said to the store manager, I said, so what are you doing with all those? And he's like, well, I don't know, we can't really sell them. And I said, well, can I have them? And he said, well, I don't know what you're going to do with them. Like, we can't sell them. And I said, I think I got an idea. So we took them, and we plastered the entire ceiling of the cabin with it. So, which you'll see a picture of later. And it actually went really smooth. It was actually a really easy thing. It was probably one of the easier things to apply, and there was no lead and tape. So that was another thing that we really worked hard on in this project, was to have no drywall. I've got a real hate on for drywall. I think it's a horrible interior finish. It doesn't make sense. It's hard to repair. It's not durable. You can push your fingernail into it. It's dumb. Not good. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's like the doorknob, right? Like the classic doorknob. Like, why do we build with this stuff? See, drywall's a funny thing because we just started using it because it looked like plaster. So we were plastering it, where plaster was awesome. Like, try and punch a hole in the wall that's plastered. You will break your knuckles, I guarantee it. Punch a hole in the wall with drywall and it's garbage. Junk. So pallets, this was interesting. I believe that approximately a third of Regina hates me now because I made them peel pallets apart. And it was not an easy job, I have to admit. But you can see here, this is actually the leftovers from the pallets that we dismantled. Hundreds of pallets, and they're everywhere. We were having companies like, oh God, please take our pallets. Please take our pallets, we don't know what to do with them. And so I'll give you a little hint. The trick with these pallets is actually to take a skill saw and you write off the ends of the boards because they've got nails in them and they're nailed with Ardox nails. And so the rails and the two outside rails and the ends of the boards are right off. You just cut them off with a skill saw and all that's left is the centerpiece. And you can peel that off with a crowbar and then you've got perfectly good wood. So, not to say that there was no waste. This pile would have been 5 times as big had it been full pallets we were throwing out, and they ended up using this for firewood. So they kind of sold it that way. So as the build went on, I believe this is day 2 now. The building's starting to come together. You can see we got some pallet wood on the side here for siding. We started siding before we even had the roof on or anything. You can see the signage here on the walls. The other thing we did use some, but we didn't use tons of recycled, was some of the framing lumber. Although we could find a lot of blocks and like 6-foot pieces, anything under 6 feet was easy to find. Finding a 16-foot 2x12 that some contractor had thrown in the garbage, they're not dumb people. They're not going to do it. And because the building had to satisfy Canadian Building Code, we couldn't like get crazy. You know what I mean? Well, we could have got crazy, but I chose not to. I didn't want to do it. So I don't know where everybody is. It must have been lunch here. Bunch of slackers. Oh, there's Lee. Here's Lee here, trying to tell people what to do. It's pretty good with that. Okay, so here's more walls going in place. That part didn't work so hot with the skid steer. Was my idea. It was one of my not so good ideas. But you can see we've got windows cut out. Everything's ready to go. The walls were. I made the mistake of letting it, like actually planning out the plates and building the framed walls like during the build. And it was one thing I learned, that if I ever try to build a house in 3 days again, I will lay out all the plates beforehand, so that when the volunteers show up, it's like stud, cripple, trimmer, and then it just go, right? And then you try to have everything pre-cut too. So in framing, of course, there's short blocks under all the windows, recycled stuff, anything above the headers, if there's anything there, recycled stuff. We got away from window headers and door headers in here because we put a band of 2x12 all the way around. So and that just kind of ended the header issue. So we have no headers in any of the doors or windows, which was actually really handy. This is Lacey. This is one of our carpenter's apprentices, and this is my office manager with a nail gun, scary. And she is they're putting pallet wood on. So the thing with the pallet wood is that you can't actually put it on horizontal because it's a short pieces, right? You have a joint like every 3 feet. So we said instead we would put it on vertically, and then we found a bunch of this trim that was misordered at a local building material supply place, and they donated it to us. And so we put it vertically, and then we put a drip edge, and then we put more vertically, and then another drip edge. So every time we have a row of it, we've got a drip edge, which the water sheds it off. And of course we did put new building paper on, I'm sorry. Finding that reuse is tough. I found like little pieces that were all torn. Okay, this is Andrea. She's one of our laborers. And she is putting in hardwood flooring, and you'll notice that the hardwood flooring looks a little peculiar. So for those of you that were here last night, you'll know this already, but what happens is when people install hardwood floors, in our brains it has to be the same, right? Because it's hardwood flooring. So when you go to that flooring department, and you go to get that flooring, you're looking at it, and you're going to buy all boxes of the same kind and color, because that's how we've categorized it in our brains. However, we started looking at the flooring, and the Habitat had like boxes and boxes and boxes of hardwood, and we called up another hardwood flooring installer. Here's a good one, and we said, hey, I won't name him, but I said, what do you do with all your box ends? And he says, oh well, he says it's great because I run it through the thickness planer, and I take the finish off, and then I put it in my wood stove, and we burn it. And I'm like, okay, so what do you burn it? And he's like, well. Sometimes it's walnut, and sometimes it's maple, and sometimes it's cherry, and sometimes it's hickory, and whatever I'm installing. And so he's burning this stuff. So we lamented and we grieved for a while, and then we asked him if we could have it. And he was like, okay, sure. So he gave us all this hardwood. And believe it or not, it's all different manufacturers, and it's all different widths. But as long as you do one full row right across, and you just check to make sure that the next row will fit, and you find another piece that will fit, it will work. Now, what I did do is I used we did nail the floor down. It's a hardwood floor, so we nailed it. And we used an underlay underneath it. And the underlay is actually made with recycled material, bought as a new product, but made from recycled content. And it actually, like the hardwood, there's a variance of, I'd say 3/32 seconds max on the thickness of the hardwood. And because that stuff's a little bit spongy, it kind of ate that up. So it kind of made the floor solid all the way across so you wouldn't get any kind of like weirdness to it. So we put that down, and then we put this floor, and I won't lie to you, that floor took a long time because it was a lot of work to actually make sure all the pieces fit and everything. So it wasn't easy as pie. However, when we were done, it looked fantastic, and you'll see some shots of that in a little bit. Our volunteers retired. The one on the right, that's Bruce. He's actually a client of mine, and it was kind of a testament. It was so cool to see people come together for this because, you know, here I am running around, my hair is all like wild and crazy, and you know, I'm freaking out trying to sort everything out, and I don't know, I kind of felt like we were alone there for a while, and I wasn't really sure why I'd done this, and all of a sudden my clients walk up and they're like, yeah, we're here to work, we got our tools, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And they just showed up and they just wanted to be a part of it. And so in Regina, I don't know, I guess I'm not entirely sure how walnut construction is viewed, but I'm starting to see things that are really making me smile. And every once in a while I'll be somewhere and someone will be talking and they'll say something like, yeah, you know, I'm really interested in like earth conscious building, and I'm like, hey, that's my slogan. Like, I made that up. And I mean, everybody thinks that yeah, walnut's really extraordinary because we're like so amazing and everything, because we're weird. But we screw up all the time. All the time. And the only reason why I think people are actually attracted to us is because we're willing to take like enormous risk. And to build a house out of recycled materials, this was a huge risk for us. Like, if this had gone wrong, like every kind of media was there the whole weekend. There was radio, TV, newspaper, like it was all over the place. And I could have come out looking like a real ass. And I'm not sure if I have. Maybe I have, I'm not sure. So, but I just want to point out that really you don't have to be that extraordinary to do something extraordinary. You just have to make a decision and have faith and go for it, because, I don't know, make it happen. So here's the house once we're nearing completion. It's basically a shed roof, so just one flat surface of a roof. Windows and doors were all pulled out of the restore. Some of them were, like these garden doors here, were new doors, but they were misordered, so they were like, you know, okay, give them a restore kind of thing. These windows were pulled out of a house. They were dual pane wood windows, seals were good on them. I can talk about windows for like 4 to 5 hours. But people get a little bit weird, and the PVC market has done a very good job of telling people that if you don't have PVC windows, they're shit, and so you need to replace your windows, which is shit. Your windows, if you have wood windows and they're dual pane and they're good sealed, then there's nothing wrong with them. And wood is actually a better insulator than PVC, nor does it toxify our environment, so keep them, just maintain them. So we use those. We built the house on pallets of brick that the restore was selling. I think they actually want to sell those, so we're supposed to move it soon, but what do you do, right? So this is the inside. Cabinet doors on the ceiling. All the interior trim, a lot of stuff kind of happened during the build, where we're kind of like in the middle of the build and all of a sudden we realize that we don't actually have the material that we needed. So this kind of happened with the trim, and we had, like somehow we just missed interior trim, like we didn't have any, we had no plans, we didn't know what we were going to do. So we were freaking out, right? But stuff like this just kind of happens where we're walking, like, what are we going to do with the trim? What are we going to do with the trim? And then we walked and there's this big, like, rack full of fence pickets. And I remember Lee and I looking at it, and we're like, well, that could be trim. And at this point, we're like, what the hell, right? Like, it's just throwing the towel. Like, okay, this is the trim. The trim's over here. And we let Habitat know later. We took the trim and we stained it all up, and you know, we installed it, and it turned out pretty good. There's a lot of scarf joints. Fence pickets aren't long enough to cover an entire side of a door in one joint. So if you look closely, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little scarf joint down here. And a lot of people shy away from, I mean, in finishing, if you'd have done that in a new home, like I would be pretty upset with my finishers if they had put a scarf joint on the leg of a door. However, it's kind of character. You know, it's kind of okay. It's kind of like, well, you know, this is what it is. This is what we're showcasing, and there's a scarf joint there because it is recycled material, and now it's a conversation piece. The other thing, it's a little bit hard to see in here, but right here, there's this beautiful wainscoting in the house. And this was one of those things that just kind of like happened, and it was just such a beautiful thing. So when we're building and you want speed, you want to cover stuff up really fast. You want something that's going to cover a large portion of the wall quickly. And walnut construction, remember I was saying we screw up all the time? So we ordered these doors for a client. We were doing a condo renovation, very high-end, really nice. And he wanted these shaker-style doors. They were pine doors. And there was a little bit of a miscommunication, and about $1,500 in doors got painted instead of stained. And they got painted white. And so I remember coming into the shop, and yeah, doors look good, they're painted, okay, go put them in. So they went and put 1 or 2 in. The client calls me, he's like, hey, Eric, I said, yeah. And he says, do you remember what color the doors were going to be? And I said, yeah, white. And he goes, do you have the allowance sheet in front of you? And I'm like, well, it's in the file, just hang on. And I went and pulled it out and I looked and I said, oh, okay, John, we'll order you new doors. So we had to order all new doors. I don't think I made much money on that job, to be honest. But what happens, we had these doors and we didn't know what to do with them. Like the hinge gains had been cut out for them already. And we were just like, God, what are we going to do? $1,500 in doors, we felt awful. And then this restore project, or rehouse project came along. And I looked at the door one day, and it's a shaker style door, which means it has a flat panel in it, and then it's got very square rails and stiles. And so I took the door and I laid it on its side. And it's down, and I stood back and I looked at it, I was like, my God, it's wainscoting. And then the knob hole's there, right, which is really big and ugly. So how do you hide the knob hole? Oh, there's baseboard. And when we put the baseboard on, it covered it up by like a 1/16 of an inch. You just like put the baseboard on, just covered it right up. So there's beautiful wainscoting in there, but really they're just walnuts messed up doors. They're there. That's how it kind of looked. As well, this is the signage here. So with design, you have to be a little bit careful because if you just take a big sign and stick it on the wall, it can look kind of lame. If you're lucky enough to find a sign that has some sort of like cool attribute to it, like Troy last night and Ray Lynn? Yeah. Ray Lynn. They I don't know if you guys have missed it. They renovated a commercial space down here and they peeled the plaster off the commercial space on the wall, and on the brick was this beautiful old mural, which is really cool. That pass. Like screwing a giant tire sign to the wall, not gonna work. So although we did have this huge piece of Lexan, we didn't want it to look like crap. So what we did is we cut it into 6-inch strips so that it was unintelligible, like you couldn't actually read what it said anymore, but it was just kind of weird designs, and that's what ended up happening here. So there's just all sorts of randomness everywhere, and it looks like, I don't know, I think it looks kind of cool. You can kind of see here some cabinets. Those were just high school laboratory desks that came out of a high school. They had piles of them at the Restore. We told them about that later too. And then the boxes on the wall. So kitchen cabinets, the use of this cabinet was it was actually going to a lake to be like a cottage. And the upper cabinets, they said, didn't need to be anything too substantial. So what we did is we had one antique Coke crate. And it looked really, really cool. And I thought if we just screwed that to the wall, it would look fantastic. However, we have one. But as we're trying to figure out what to do, I looked and I'm looking at this pile of pallet garbage, like all the stuff that we couldn't use from the pallets. And now these pieces are short, right? They're like this long. But the crate's made out of pieces that long. So I gave them the Coke crate, the antique Coke crate, and I said, make replicas of this. And they just went to town and made replicas. So there's actually what I've realized through this experience and just through others experiencing construction is there is a use for every material no matter what. It doesn't matter. It can be just a little splinter of wood. At some point you're going to need that little splinter of wood. There is a use for it, and it's just a matter of trying to figure out how in the world you're going to make it work and how you're going to store it and use it and all that good stuff. So that's basically the whole crew. We got Roy on the left and Andrea and Matt, who's no longer with us, and Angus and Brittany and Lacey and Lee and Ryan, and we've added a few since. And that's, I guess, is the insanity that was the rehouse. So I also have I have a video, so maybe what I'll do, I'm sure there's going to be questions. Maybe I'll show you the video, and then afterwards we can do questions. Is that kind of jive? So the video too, basically, the idea with the video is that it's for, it's specifically been made for networks. So they are pitching it to some of the bigger networks like HGTV and Outdoor Life and, I don't know, Do-It-Yourself Network. I don't have cable, so I don't really watch TV. And the idea is to make a TV series out of it, which would be really weird and throw a huge loop into my life. However, it would be fun, I guess. They want us to build 5 more before Christmas if it goes ahead. And so I will probably want to die.
And you'll be calling every single one of us.
Oh, I will, yeah, you guys will have to come out and help. There is... Oh, I'm so going to get this with this little touchpad here. Am I capable? You guys should see me with a hammer, honestly. Volume?
My company does specifically environmentally friendly, non-toxic, super energy efficient construction. We found that the kind of construction waste that was ending up in the landfill was ridiculous. I said to myself, We can make a house out of that.
This is the most innovative cottage.
If you just open your eyes to the world around you, there is building materials everywhere. We were thinking about the doors and wainscoting thing, chalkboards above. But we're also building the furniture, which is anything from bicycle rims to tailgate of a truck. My goal for this whole project was 80% recycled material, which I think we're easily going to hit. There's like a pile of houses right there. Perfect. This trunk was meant to be an awning for a window.
It's a great company. Awesome hippie company.
Me as the yoga master. Andrea's really strong. Don't mess with Andrea. Lacey's a hard worker, but still very thin. Angus doesn't like people screwing around. Roy's a hippie for sure.
Everybody's so positive, relaxed. Don't shoot me. I'll throw you off this roof.
It's my first day working with Eric. It's definitely the most interesting job I've had. Itchy knee, son, cheek!
The build? Awesome.
Look at this. The wall's made out of garbage. It's not garbage. It's recycled materials.
Okay, centered out.
Safety is number one here. I don't think I quite comprehended how mammoth a task it was going to be. Show me your windows. They look a lot like doors. Say it with me. Here, not back here. There's a lot of pressure here. I'm freaking out. Well, that one's wrong, and that one's wrong. Okay, you're right. I fucked up. It can't get done and look like shit. It's got to get done and look good.
I'm not sure if it's gonna be done in time, but I'm an optimistic person.
We can use all the help we can get.
If your toes don't get loud, they don't hurt.
I was actually really shocked that so many people came out.
I was just so interested and really wanted to be a part of it. I thought, let's give it a go.
Here you go.
Everybody's having a good time. Eric is crazy.
They've taken a huge chance with us because who knows what this thing's going to look like. Who knows?
Not worried about it? No.
We're not sure what the cost of the cabin's going to be in the end. Hope for the best. I love this. This is great. Even commercial people should be looking into this aspect of building nowadays.
Here we're using things that I would never even thought of.
They just throw it in the dump because once the sign's stale, the sign's stale. You can't use the sign anymore. And we're kind of 6-inch strips and make material finish on it.
What style would you call it?
Oscar the Grouch meets Martha Stewart. Is it art? It's absolutely art. It's art you can live in. Get up there, guys. That looks great.
You save the environment, save money too at the same time. That's a win-win.
We can make a house like that. So I was talking about when you take something like this on, it's kind of risky. I remember showing up on the site, we had planned an open house, and we had, the worst thing you can do is send out huge press releases, because then you actually have to like do something about it. And so we had these press releases all go out, and all the media was coming, and all these people were going to come for this open house. And I showed up on site at 6 p.m. the night before the open house, and there was about 3 days of work left on it. And I just looked, and I knew right away what I was in for. And I was like, okay guys, who's in? And they looked at me and they were like, and Roy looks at me, hippie Roy, and he's like, I'm in. And I'm like, okay. And so a bunch of my staff stayed till midnight, including one of my staff's pregnant wife, who we had on a nail gun putting trim on. And Roy and I worked like right through the night. And we didn't actually quit. The next morning, people started showing up as we were cleaning up tools, and so I mean, it was a job. It was a lot of work. So it looks like a lot of fun in the video, and it really was, but it wasn't without its trials and tribulations, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Questions though?
Did you happen to track how many volunteer hours were put into it?
Yeah, we figured if we had paid everybody about $16 an hour, I think it was worth 30 grand. So I can't remember exactly how many hours that was. Now the costs of the actual house were about 30,000, 30 to 35. There's some costs that we're not really sure how we should include because there was like feeding the volunteers and a lot of stuff like that where it was just like transportation and things. So it was a tough thing to track. We figured the house is about $30,000. Typically at square footage prices, you know, the average new home in Regina is selling for anywhere between really cheap would be like $280, higher end would be like $380. So, I mean, I think that looks pretty high class, so call it $300. So $300, and it's 512 square feet, so you're looking at about $150,000. Grant you that includes a basement, so a basement's probably 20. So you're probably looking at about $130,000 for that house, brand new. If I was just to build it, if you were to come to me and say build out any materials. And we built it for, granted we had volunteer labor, but we built it for 30. If we had paid them a decent wage, it would have been 60. So still about half. Yep. You can both at the same time, I'm smart, I can take it. No, I'm just kidding, I can't.
Okay, I was just, like, I think what you did with the reused materials was awesome. But I'm also really curious about sort of the other environmental aspects, like about the reused materials, what's their longevity, or what about the insulation and sort of energy efficiency of the place?
Yeah, well, that was really important to us too because you know, it's great if you can build a recycled house, but if it's pretty drafty or no good, then what's the point? So we did say 80% recycled material because we knew that we were going to have some new stuff in it, and a couple of things that were new, insulation was one of them. However, the insulation was made from recycled material. So it's starting to happen in the industry that people are taking waste product and making recycled new content out of it. So all the insulation we used, walls and ceiling, was mineral wool, which is used, it's a mineral, like a steel slag that they whip into like a cotton candy, is the best I can describe it. Excuse me. It's a good insulation, higher R value, it's not susceptible to water, it doesn't lose its thermal performance when it's wet, and it's fire retardant, so it's great that way. So we used that in the walls and the roof, and we had Rona sell that to us at cost, so that was handy. And then in the floor we used blown-in cellulose. And blown-in cellulose is a very affordable insulation. It's got a little bit less of an R value, it's about R4 per inch, but because the floor joists were so deep, we were able to fill it right up, so we got about R40 on the floor. So performance-wise, it's great. We also made sure we just took a lot of care when we put vapor barrier on, just to make sure that we stopped any sort of air movement. And windows and doors installation, I just make sure it's sterilized really well. As for durability of the products, the one thing that I would probably say will come off first will be the pallet siding, unless it's treated. If it's painted, it'll probably go for a long time, because it's just wood. However, if they just leave it, I would give it 15 years. However, 15 years for a bunch of pallets that were headed to the dump is not such a bad thing, I don't think. So, and then also the roof, and no one ever thinks to ask about the roof, but the roof actually, Roofmark donated all their yard coal. So every pallet that had a few bundles that fell off and they like split open, they put them all in one pile, and you get this pile full of shingles that are all different colors, and so they can't sell them. And I said, do you have any yard coal? And they're like, yeah, but it's all different colors. I was like, oh man, you don't understand. I was like, can I have them? And he was like, okay. And so we shingled the whole roof with 35-year asphalt shingles, architectural shingles, layered shingles, and high quality shingle. And it's really neat looking. It's kind of patchy. So anyway, sorry.
That was my question.
Oh, so you guys are like connecting there. Yeah, yeah.
Just tell us about maybe the challenges you may have had when it came down to building permits and...
Yeah, so, and that was another thing, is we wanted to make sure that it was built to Canadian building code. So that was, we did use, a lot of the framing lumber was new, anything that was structural was new, so floor joists, the full length studs, the rafters, that was all new stuff. And then the sheathing was 1/2-inch plywood. Now we were kind of worried about the fact that you're supposed to see a stamp on the lumber. Technically, by building code, the inspector's supposed to be able to come in and see that you're using number 2 or better lumber, or structural sheathing or something like that. We just took it for granted that it was, and we went for it. I just made sure that it was stable off right, and I kind of went that way. because it was built as an RTM, ready to move house, it didn't need a permit for being built in the city of Regina. It just needs a permit for being moved out. Now, the municipality it's going into, that's where it'll be inspected. So when the Indian head inspector comes out and sees it, we'll deal with that when it happens. Yeah.
What'd you do for heating mechanical?
We just went electric, just because it was going to be easier. So we went new baseboard electric heaters, which were donated as well. So we did that.
What about the electrical wiring and the outlet boxes?
All new.
Oh, it's all
Yeah,
right.
yeah. The wiring is all new. Oh, the boxes we did reused. We just cleared everything with the electrician beforehand. So we kind of just the restore had like bins of boxes, and so we used those. But the wiring was new, the plugs were new, the panel was new, the breakers were new. Yeah. Yeah, there was some stuff you just don't really want to mess with. Like you don't want to put in used baseboard heaters. At least I didn't want to. I mean, I take risks, but let's be serious.
Plumbing materials?
Plumbing fixtures were reused, except for the kitchen sink because it was donated. I was a little upset that we ended up using that actually. But most of it was donated. Toilet was a dual flush toilet from Habitat that they had. Shower head was also, I believe, reused. Tile in the shower was left over from a really high, $20 a square foot tile. And my tiling contractor, he's like, well, I got all this stuff on my garden shed, do you want it? And I was like, yeah, man, come and install it. So he came and put it in. And we also put unfinished maple hardwood flooring on the walls in the bathroom, on one of the walls anyway. There's this hardwood flooring installer. He said, well, you can have that maple hardwood flooring, but he says it's all screwed because it's a little, like it bent at work a little bit, so there's like an eighth, so when you put it together, there's like a little 1/16 of an inch gap in between. But when you put it on the wall, it looks really good. Like it kind of looks like a cabin kind of look. So it's just kind of being willing to accept something like that for what it is, accepting the material. Anybody else? Yeah.
Do you know approximately how many hours you spent kind of like looking around and scouting the material?
It wasn't too bad actually. Included in the 30,000 was my labor for my people to do that. So there was about, if I'm not mistaken, there was about $7,000 in labor for my entire crew. Now I didn't pay them. How did that work? I paid them for 10 hours a day. And then if they wanted to stay after that, they were allowed to. Some of them did, some of them didn't. Actually, there was one point I looked around and I was like, I'm the only walnut here. Like, what happened? But they were tired, so. Yeah, like as for time-wise, I wouldn't say it was that much. Like I would probably say, I probably had 2 or 3 people spend 5 days, 4 days, looking around and just gathering stuff. I mean, it's not that hard to find. It's pretty easy. And actually, some companies, they like these things. This stuff is a nuisance to them. And if you're willing to take it off their hands, they'll help you out. Like they'll deliver it. So, like Roof Mart showed up and delivered our shingles. Yeah, Jim.
I was just wondering, in terms of, there's not a lot of reuse stores around Canada, major centers and some smaller communities. But just wondering, are you optimistic that there can somehow be a protocol with lumber yards and contractors to try and save a lot of these shingles and pieces of plywood, 2x4s? Like, are you optimistic, or do you think there's some room to work with these companies? Or
I did some backpacking on the West Coast a bunch of years ago, and we were on Hornby Island, I believe it was, and I remember the guy we were staying with. We just ran into this guy. He said, "Hey, you want to go to the dump?" And I was like, "This is what you do on Hornby Island? Like, what do you mean?" He's like, "Yeah, we're gonna go to the dump. Let's go." So it was like an event. It was like, we're gonna go to the dump, and it wasn't like he needed to. It was just like we wanted something to do, and it would be fun to go to the dump. So we went to Hornby Island, and we went to the dump and drove in. And the actual place for the garbage was the smallest area of their facility. And the rest of it was what they called the free store. So there's like a store, and you can just go in there and shop, but you don't have to pay for anything, so you can just take. And if you have something at home you want to get rid of, you take it there and you put it on the shelf. And then they have a whole recycling facility there. So they also had a toilet and an outhouse type area that was all built out of recycled materials, and then all the sewage went through this filtration system that was built out of tires on the hill. Like it was way beyond anything I could have imagined. So it's going to take a major shift with all of us, right? I mean, for those of us who have seen the Regina land lump, it's pretty disgusting. Every time I go there, I see, pisses me off, relentlessly. I drive to the top of the hill. I cannot go to the garbage dump, and they let us go to the top because we have a commercial permit. So every time I go, without a doubt, I will come across a mountain of cardboard. A mountain of cardboard. And you know what's really dumb is there's a huge blue dumpster at the base of the hill for cardboard. And it's like, what's going on here? So I asked one of the city guys one time, I said, what do you, like, why don't you make them, like, go put this in the dumpster at the bottom of the hill? And he looks at me, he's a city employee, he looks at me and he goes, well, then they'd have to separate it. And I'm like, yes, that is correct. They would have to separate their garbage. So I think that we will get there, but I think there needs to be a lot of change, and there needs to be a lot of change just in the rules and regulations. Like, some of this stuff has to come from the top down. The city finally has to stop messing around and just say, you know what, from now on you're doing this, and that's just how it is. And if you don't like it, move out. I don't care. And because it's disgusting. It's pretty bad. And I have to say, like, when I moved to Regina, I came from hippie BC, and right away we were like, okay, well, we got to find out the schedule for the city recycling program, because of course the city would have a recycling program. And no, the city does not have a recycling program. So I think we have a lot of work to do, and I think that's why something like this was pretty shocking, because we have nothing. We have nothing. So we have a lot of work to do. Am I optimistic? Of course I'm optimistic. I think it'll happen. It's just going to take time. It's just going to have to make more videos, I guess. Yeah.
Just as a comment, you were talking about BC and going in there and being able to pick up stuff. That might have changed in the last little while, because I know there's a couple of places in Manitoba that we used to go to pick up electronics and stuff. Like, your dryer's not working. You go to the dump and pick up a new burner, and they've actually stopped that. The ability to go into the dump and take stuff out.
Yeah, and that's a liability thing. Everybody's so afraid of lawyers now, right? Like, you can't, like, we couldn't actually go to the garbage dump and take stuff out because it's a liability thing. So we hurt ourselves, oh my God, we're going to sue them, kind of thing. But if you facilitate that and you say, well, this is the space for recycled materials, then it's a different thing. It's just how you manage it. Some other questions yet?
I don't know if this is a question, but I've heard there's a huge, because for instance, you see all these 1950s houses with clear fur, and people take it out and put in press board, and then people kind of get like a nice piece of fur.
Yeah.
So there is a huge industry. It would be a real opportunity for somebody to just start collecting this stuff, and because it is an emerging industry.
Yeah, and the wood, we're actually renovating a 1912 2.5-story, like kind of the 4-square house right now. And the lumber that has come out of there has been unbelievable. Like, growth rings like I've never seen. Super, super tight. This stuff all came out of BC. And yeah, I mean, as we use up more of this lumber, it'll become more appealing to use, and maybe we won't just bulldoze the 4 houses behind Safeway in Cathedral Village, because maybe there's lumber in there that we can actually use. But for now, those houses are going to get bulldozed.
I was just going to comment on that. There are places, at least I know in Alberta, and I think there's one in Saskatchewan, where they specialize just in reclaiming lumber from
Ontario,
teardowns.
Quebec,
And there's at least one in each province, and I'm aware of it. And it is expensive because they put a lot of work in. They got to remill it and all that kind of stuff too. But I know in some of our stuff we've definitely used them, and we keep track. But they'll take gym floors, grain elevator wood, side, everything, anything.
Yeah, there's Lincoln at Last Mountain Timber near Regina Beach. He's been recycling lumber for a long time, and he produces some beautiful stuff. So he's got it going on. There's also, like, a Barnes or another prime example. I mean, there's a barn near Regina, and there's approximately $50,000 in lumber in there, and it's a huge monster of a barn, but it's like a cathedral, and there's like 8x8 fir posts that are like 27 feet long in there. And I went and did a rundown on the whole thing to try and figure out what it was worth, because the building is going to come down. But like 2x12 floor joists on 16-inch centers for 200 feet, 3 wide. Like, it's amazing. And compared to the lumber we're using now, I mean, the stuff you pick up from Home Depot, it's kind of cute. But yeah.
Are you planning more of these kind of houses, or there was something at the beginning about having to build 5 by?
Yeah. So, like, basically right now, we are kind of waiting to find out from television networks. If a television network picks it up and says, yes, we will do this, then likely they'll run the pilot, which would be this one, and then maybe it's hard to say. It depends on how they would sign it up. So they might say, yeah, we'll run the pilot and see what kind of ratings it gets, and then we'll decide from there. Or they'll say, yeah, we want to sign you on to a season, which would be 6 shows, but we've already done 1, so we have to do 5 more. And if we do have to do 5 more, I don't know how that's going to work exactly, but we'll work it out. So they want to do, the idea is to do, we do a few in Eastern Canada, and then probably a few in Alberta, at Calgary, Edmonton. And then in the off season, we probably go down southern states because it's warmer, and probably do some down there. So, what's that?
Do it in the winter up north.
Yeah, okay. The next thing. That'll be language.
What advice would you have for bigger production builders that?
I think it starts. It just starts on the ground floor. I think, like yesterday at the high school, I had these pieces of wood, and I actually timed myself. I pulled a 6-foot piece of 2x6 out of the garbage bin, and I figured that board would be worth about $2, say. And I wanted to time myself. I had never done this before. Actually, I just did it in front of the kids to see how much money it would cost if I pulled these nails out and paid myself $14 an hour is when I'll pay my labor. You know, how much does this board actually cost me? So I pulled the nails out. And they were ugly nails. One was right in the middle of a knot, but I got it out. And the board ended up, my labor was worth 23 cents. So I think the first thing that production builders need to understand is that you're not doing it because it's saving you money. You're not throwing this stuff out because it's not saving you money. It's not. You're losing money at it. So it's a question then of how do you manage the system properly? Because no, you don't want your $35 an hour head carpenter going out there and pulling stuff out of the garbage bin. However, if you've got a grunt that's just started and needs to prove himself, and you give him a nail puller and a hammer, and you say, okay, go, I want you to pull these nails out, and I want you to stack them up in size order for the carpenters on this dunnage. Then when the carpenter's doing backing or whatever, he can just walk out and he's got pre-sized pieces ready to go. So it's staying organized, and it's making sure that things are cleaned up as you go. And look at the stuff you're throwing out. I mean, just look at it and try not to think that, you know, maybe that's not just a broken cedar shake. Maybe that's a shim for installing your interior doors or something like that. Having an open mind. But I think just staying organized and really looking at what you're putting in your dumpster is one thing. And then also having a really good recycling program. Because, I mean, yeah, we're pulling all these nails out of these boards, but hey, the nails are made out of steel. And steel's worth money. So you just keep a bucket and you just keep filling the bucket full of nails. And eventually we just take, every once in a while in Regina, we just have a trailer and we just haul all of our steel to CMS, and then I get $120 or whatever it ends up being. So that's not such a bad deal either, because then I can buy my staff coffee and then they like me. So.
How do you feel about using a big on-site mulcher for all the waste wood?
I've never done it.
We've done a lot of
that.
Have
you? Yeah.
We just collect all the wood and then we just, the big mulcher, it pulls the nails and everything, you don't have to do that.
Really?
Yeah, it's got a big magnet in there and just
that's amazing.
straightens it all up, pulls the nails, and we just use it for landscaping mulch. But
yeah, that's great. I think that's fantastic. Maybe you could teach me something.
You gotta be careful what goes in there though.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, that's smart.
When you're using recycled pallets and stuff like that, is there any concerns about mold and mildew? Because they've been sitting outside for so long.
The thing about wood and cellulose basically is that it will mold and mildew if it stays wet. It can get wet and dry out, that's no problem. But if it stays wet, it will mold. So you just want to make sure that your pallet hasn't been sitting in a pool of water for a very long time and actually had mold started. Once it's on the siding of the side of the house, I would be pretty surprised if it actually molded. It's too dry. It would just dry out.
I noticed on the pictures though that some of the wood looked like it was grayed already.
Yeah, and that's just weathering, right?
That's just weathering.
Yeah, that's just weathering. And I mean that's another really good point actually that you bring up is weathered wood is not bad wood, right? And a lot of contractors see a gray piece of wood and they're like, oh my god, it's garbage. But it's like, no, there's nothing wrong with it. It just got a little bit of sun. It got a suntan. It's actually more attractive now.
Just to kind of add to that, I mean, one of the things that I usually come across, especially when we're talking about home maintenance and so on, is if you drive down the countryside and you see these old barns, what color are they?
Yeah.
They're not red anymore. They're gray or almost turning black. Well, that is kind of a form of mold, but that's natural weathering. Mm-hmm. Probably, and that sounds kind of crazy, probably one of the worst things you're doing is actually painting it, because the paint actually forms a seal. So any moisture that is actually coming from inside the building and is working its way out is now going to get caught in that wood, and it slowly starts rotting it. So that's where you see a lot of paint popping off the wood because of the fact of all the moisture that's trying to get and exhausting itself out of the wood. So in a sense, then you say, well, these buildings have been not painted or not maintained forever, but in a way, it's kind of naturally just wearing itself out.
Yeah, that's great, thank you. And I think what we really need to do in our brains is we really need to start getting to the point where we don't need to have what I call the Fisher-Price house. And like PVC fencing, like, oh my God, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? Like, are we trying to build a house that looks like a shiny toy? Like, a house, something like this, actually, you walk into it, and I mean, fair enough, not everybody has to like it. I mean, I don't know if I could live in there either, I'm not sure. But if we can get to the point where we can actually appreciate those little things that maybe just aren't perfect, like, that's okay. It's like, the question you need to ask yourself is this really going to change my life? Is this going to make my life that much harder that, this has a nick in it, or that has a cut in it, or something like that, or this piece of wood is gray? Or can I actually appreciate that and appreciate what our weather does to our buildings, right? Anybody else?
It's like putting a dent in your new car, so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, take a baseball bat to your new car. That helps.
You didn't talk about your smart stud. Would you just like to?
Oh, yeah, that's a totally separate venture, but thank you for allowing me to advertise. Okay, so about two-ish years ago, I was in my backyard. I had like 2 staff at the time and was working away, and we deal with thermal bridging a lot. So this, again, I'll just to recap, thermal bridging is the movement of heat by conduction through the frame of your house. Okay, so it's basically you heat up the inside of this building. Say we had wood studs in the wall, which I'm sure we don't, but if we had wood studs in the wall, you're actually heating that wood stud, and then the heat goes outside. And you see this all the time when you're driving around, and now that I'm telling you about it, you'll identify it. You'll see these vertical lines on the sides of houses when there's frost on the wall, and it'll melt just where those lines are. That's because the heat's actually leaving your house through that stud, and it's melting it. So thermal bridging is a huge issue. In heating costs, it costs North Americans $42 billion a year, so it's kind of a large thing. And I kind of start to thinking about thermal bridging because we're always doing energy efficiency upgrades. So in Walnut, we're always kind of cladding the outsides of houses with extruded polystyrene, or trying to stop this thermal bridge. So we were trying to introduce what's called a thermal break. So you're breaking the thermal bridge. So I realized that we use 2x6s in construction today because building code says we have to have a R20 wall. And the only way to get an R20 wall with a bad insulation is to have a thicker wall. So we don't use a 2x6 for structural reasons. We just use it because we want a thicker wall. A 2x4 is actually what we need for structure. So I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, so we need a 2x4, but we're using a 2x6. And the difference is 2 inches. So why can't I, look at that, it's a maple book. Thank you for coming. So I'm thinking we have 2 inches where we can introduce a thermal break that will actually stop that heat loss or limit that heat loss. And so I just kind of like, I don't know, I'm still kind of weirded out that I invented it. I feel like I discovered it. But I had this sudden realization that, hey, why don't we just take a 2x4, put a 3/4 inch strip of extruded polystyrene laminated to the edge of it, and then a 1 1/4 inch strip of wood laminated to that foam again. So it's the same dimensions as a 2x6. It's not changing anything for the framers, but it's got this strip of foam inside of it. And then once I built a wall with this, I made a bunch of these studs and I built a wall with it. I suddenly realized the electrician now no longer has to drill holes in the studs. He just punches the wire through the foam. So that was kind of a nice little bonus. Also, carpenters no longer have to crown their studs because now the thinner strip of wood has to go on the inside, so they're pre-crowned at the factory. And then I found out that foam actually has a sound dampening quality, so we haven't tested that part of it, but it'll cut down on sound transmission as well, and they're lighter. So I kind of thought, well, this is interesting, but yeah, we all have ideas, right? We've all had ideas, and what do you do with an idea? Well, I'm slightly insane, so I went to a patent attorney, and I started the ball rolling with a patent. And that turned out to be horrendously expensive, more expensive than I could ever imagine. I could have had a really nice new truck now, but I don't. Instead, I have a Mazda that's actually not starting. And the Smart Stud kind of was born, but it kind of departed from what Walnut Construction was doing, because it's a material, it's not really a service. So I had to incorporate another company, so I started another company called Sprossel Industries Incorporated, and then started the ball rolling with that. So we did some testing. Am I supposed to get out of here? What do you think?
That's your mic.
Is that my mic?
For the recording.
Oh, sorry. So I went to Toronto and had it tested, and we tested 2 walls. We tested a conventional wall with conventional studs, and we tested our wall with the Smart Stud, and our wall actually came out at 14.4% more efficient than the conventional wall, which was, we were shocked. We were expecting half of that. We were hoping for half of that. So we kind of got caught with our pants down because we were like, whoa, this is an amazing thing. What do we do now? So we're trying to figure out manufacturing. So we're trying to get a manufacturing facility to actually mass produce them. But I'm a carpenter and I'm a crazy entrepreneur, but I'm trying to do it, and it's a lot of work. like business plan, and oh my god, it's,
So how long before that product will come to market, do you know?
the idea was to get it going for the summer. The thing that's actually holding us up right now is the adhesive. As I'm not willing to do a toxic adhesive, and it's hard to find a non-toxic adhesive that would work. Now, luckily, it is extruded polystyrene, which also bothers me a little bit. So, I don't know. I'm working on it. We're trying to figure it out. It's not perfect. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think the Smart Stud is great, and I think it could really do something amazing. But it is a stepping stone, right? Like, if we're still framing R20 walls in 10 years, I will cry. I will cry. Like, we need to be at R40 should be like code, and R60 should really be where we're at. That would be kind of where we want to be. No, yeah, I'm getting disagreed with. That's okay. We can fight later. We'll boxing match. It'll be fun. That's what I love about these things is you get all sorts of different perspectives, which is awesome. And then actually, funny thing, like we call our exterior walls R20, right? So this is great because when we tested the conventional wall, we framed it 2-foot centers, so it's not even 16-foot centers, 16 centers, it's 2-foot centers. So there's less thermal bridging. Any guesses as to what a conventional 2-foot center wall would test at? I told you yesterday, you can't answer. I have no more chocolate bars.
R17.
No. Anybody else? The conventional wall tested at R13.8. R13.8. So you frame 60-inch centers, it'd be even worse. So and that wall, I have to say, was like unbelievably air sealed. Like it was amazing. We had taped the snot out of it. It had the building paper was wrapped around the studs and the plates on the top and bottom, and it was taped to the poly on the other side. It was unbelievable. So R13.8, and then the Smart Stud wall tested at R15.8, which was, well, the guys at the facility were like, holy cow. But yeah, it's a shocking thing. So next time your contractor tells you, oh yeah, we're going to build you an R20 building envelope, you can be like, bullshit you are. Let me tell you why. Anybody else? Again, we can chat afterwards too, I think, if there's a break. I don't know if there's a break. Am I over time? Am I okay?
No, you're good.
Good, okay.
Well, that, my friends, is Eric Penner DeWalt. We will continue here with a break for about 15 minutes. If anyone's got the time, then 15 minutes from now we'll start back up with Philip Young again, who has spoke with us yesterday.
Yeah, we have 2 sessions scheduled. One was with Philip and one was
With Angie Bug, yeah.
Environmental Society. So given that we've already combined 1 session, we're just going to convene here with Philip and Angie, and we possibly could do the 2 sessions together with Philip leading first, and then Angie following her presentation up on building operator training and energy awareness. It kind of does fit well with what Philip is accomplishing in Toronto there. So it looks like we'll probably have 1 session right here at 10:30, unless there's a couple hundred people out there that security are holding back. But again, thanks to Eric, and yeah, lots of muffins, lots of coffee. Lunch we do have today here available. The SIAS program did do some sandwiches and veggies. So you can get a sandwich and a veggie plate for $5 if you're interested in eating lunch here. And then just look at the schedule for the afternoon. So thanks again, and we'll see you at 10:30 in this room.